Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atik Ahmedbati, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to the world's #1 radio talk show on homeopathy, the Homeopathy Health Show, with me, Atik Ahmedbati. My guest on today's episode is a true gem of a homeopath, none other than the amazing Peter Tumminello. Now, Peter is a homeopathic clinician and researcher of over 35 years, and he's based in Sydney, Australia. He's known around the world for his work on gemstones and subsequent books, namely 12 Jewels and Psyche and Structure. Now, what's really amazing and inspiring is that Peter has now prepared well over 250 medicines sourced from crystals and minerals. Personally, this is not only inspiring, but it's such an absolute service to humanity as it opens up so many new approaches to healing in homeopathy. Peter Tumminello, thank you so very much for joining me all the way from Australia.
And thank you for asking me, Atik, and great to be here.
Now, for the listeners, just so you know, I'm recording this at 10 p.m. on a certain day, and Peter is into the next day at 9 a.m. So woohoo! And I'm going to try and I'm definitely awake, but my voice may sound a bit heavier than it does because I've done a lot of talking all day. But hey, enough about that. Let's move over to Peter Tumminello. So Peter, it's absolute honor. And Peter, I wanted really to start by asking you about your interest in gems. You're a homeopath, of course, but how did that come about? What was that initial spark or that journey, or was it just something organic?
Yeah. I often ponder this because it's become so mixed up with the homeopathy. But when I really dissected, it was the gems were in me from the beginning. So I found my first one at about age 5 or 6.
Oh.
And so we used to have, I lived on a road, and in those days you didn't have gutters and curbs. You just had gravel at the edge of the tarred part. And the gravel came from a quarry near Sydney. And I found this beautiful glowing green thing one day. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I just knew that I liked it a lot. And so I kept it. And I've lost track of it now, but I've learned that it was a piece of the precious or semi-precious stone prehnite, which is something I have in my dispensary now and use occasionally. And from there, I was just really enraptured by gems and crystals, and started to go out looking for them when I was about age 15 or 16. Yeah, precious metals, gems and crystals, and I was enraptured by them. So yeah, that was there for me very, very strongly.
That's fascinating. And are they readily available? I mean, if like you've mentioned in those days, or did you have to specifically search or had to be in a certain area?
Oh, right. So in Australia, we have, because it's a vast country with not so many people, it's a different situation. The cities are the cities, okay? They're just like most cities. But outside of that, there are many places where gemstones are there. And, there's a thing called Crown Land and state forests. And in those days, they even had fossicking areas, places where they knew that there were gems, and you could go and look if you were just a member of the public.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And they still have it today to some extent. But it's because it's such a vast country and the properties, like the cattle properties, are many tens of thousands of acres and hectares. Getting onto them and finding things isn't too hard if you're determined. Yeah. So I still do that nowadays. And I know places to go and you can still find them. Yeah. I haven't got anything in front of me that I've found recently, but hey, you can still find some amazing things.
And is it
And
a vast selection of different types?
yeah, well, in Australia, we have diamonds right through to agates, and everything in between. We've got sapphires. There's a place where you can get rubies, and there are not many emeralds except in Western Australia.
Hmm.
But there's all the opals that everybody would know about. There are a couple of big sapphire fields. It used to be one of the biggest producers of sapphires in the world, and many, many other stones. Yeah. So, recently I've been doing chrysoprase quite a bit, just because I like the scene where it's found. But
Hmm.
it's broad and vast and deep. Yeah, about what you can do out there and what you can find. And many
Uh,
of them are precious and semi-precious, so there are people doing it commercially also.
I was just going to ask, but there's still room for researchers such as yourself just to go and help themselves as such.
Well, that's putting it really lightly. It's hard. It's not easy.
Hmm.
Yeah. First of all, you've got to know the how to get by in the country and in the outback because it's a completely different environment.
Hmm.
And unless you understand the ethic and the culture, um, either you're going to run into lots of obstacles in the form of people
Hmm.
or in the form of what's available to eat and drink and travel, or you're going to run into obstacles with the land itself and survival. So, you've got to be really quite knowledgeable and on your game to do it well. Mm.
There's so many parallels. Just before we pressed record, really, I spoke to you about Ian White, and he's been on the show several times now, talking about the bush flower essences, and he was talking
Mm.
about how he journeys, of course, in different parts of Australia, and sometimes it takes him 2 days just to travel, and then another 2 or 3 hours just to go and find, a specific flower. So tell us your process. Give us an example. Make, the it would be nice to have that real experience of what you have to go through and how you have to prepare, and then, how you are able to survive, I suppose, for those living around the world. Because for us, it's not that, that type of travel doesn't exist, as you very well know.
Mm. Okay, so look, there are many, many things that I've done. I tend to do this once or twice a year. So, and I'm trying to pull out um, I'll pull out a couple of things. One is much more local. So, I think I've been really blessed. This was all organized, I think, by the soul before I came in to
Mhm.
this life.
Mm,
And so, about mm, 80 kilometres from Sydney, there are a couple of beaches, and they're not popular beaches. But I can get there in an hour and a half. And on those beaches, they happen to be the recipients of many stones from the ocean.
mm,
You'd be familiar with it in the UK. You have beaches just made of pebbles, right?
yeah.
Without the white sand. We've got plenty of the white sand, but hey, here we've got beaches made of pebbles. And in this particular place, what I've worked out is there's an ancient river channel out under the ocean. And when the storms come, they whip up that old river channel and wash all the old river stones onto the beach.
Okay.
And many of those stones are semi-precious. So all the various forms of agates like carnelians, and the classic agate that has all the lines in it. And there are many others too that come in that group, and the jaspers all wash up on those beaches. So, I've spent many, many, many hours and many days on those beaches
Hmm.
looking for stones, heliotrope, bloodstone, every color of agate you can imagine, washes up on those beaches. So I get this is my little local beat, if you like. And, I can go there for a day, no trouble. You have to go at a certain time of day, under a certain influence of the moon. Otherwise, you're not going to get them because the tides aren't right. So
Hmm.
everything has to be right. So, that's one thing that I can do. And, if I lived in this, it would be really hard for me to live in the city if I didn't have something like that. The other extreme is going to the outback itself. And so, for instance, uh, 2007, I actually was organising for a friend of mine who's a mineralogist who was going to come from Germany.
Hmm.
And so I thought I'll suss out what it's like in a place called the Harts Range. Now, the Harts Range is right in the centre of Australia. I fly to Alice Springs. Um, I stay there overnight and I hire a four-wheel drive. And I take that four-wheel drive out to Harts Range. So out in Harts Range, there are no facilities whatsoever. Yeah,
Hmm.
you can just pitch tent, and there's no water. You have to bring in all your water, and all your food, and all your fuel. And you can't go any other time than winter because it's too dangerous. It's far too hot. And I was out there for about 5 or 6 days on my own, and I would camp, and then I would walk in. I would drive up into the range, and then I would walk about 3 hours to an old mine site looking for
Wow.
gemstones. Yeah. So I remember walking up that mountain the first time. It's so quiet out there in the desert, so perfectly quiet. I couldn't hear one sound. It's hardly imaginable. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think I heard one little sparrow flutter by in the whole day. The whole
That
thing
must have been, yeah,
awesome.
that must have been a very surreal moment, right?
It was extraordinary.
Hmm.
I got to the top of the mountain there. It is a range of mountains in the middle of Australia. And I looked out and I could see 20 kilometres in every direction. I could not see one sign of human life. You know? Not one sign. Couldn't see a road or a house or anything. I enjoyed it so much, I can hardly tell you.
Oh, I was okay. I was going to ask you, how did you manage? But that you've just answered that. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it was really, really something. I must say, I was, I often do these things. I'm an Aries, and we do things a bit impulsively. And I got back to one of the campsites one night, and there was a couple of other guys there,
Hmm.
and they were ex Vietnam veterans, and they saw me go out on my own one day there. And that night they said, "Oh, come over and have a drink with us." I went over and had a drink with them, and they just tore strips off me. They said, "Don't you ever go out on your own like that again. It is just so dangerous."
Yeah.
And then
Here's
I
you
had to
having just
sneak
done it.
out.
Well,
Anyway, yeah, nowadays I prefer to go with somebody, although I have been once again, I have been, no, I went with my partner some years later. But it is quite the adventure, but there are amazing things to be found out there. We found beautiful green beryls, which is like an emerald.
hmm.
We found aquamarine. Yeah, that is really something to pick up aquamarine. off the ground in the middle of the desert. Yeah.
On your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all sorts of other gemstones. It was quite the trip.
Is it a calling? Are you attracted? I mean, I was speaking to Ian White, and he said that the emotions that he goes through and the intuition, and he's drawn to this specific areas. And when you're out there and there's no sound, there's no human life, there's nothing to distract you from your objective of what you want to achieve. What is that feeling? How do you feel at that time?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, every consideration of normal life in the city, and I run a busy practice, um, falls away and virtually nothing else exists.
Mm,
Um, it's very easy to get in contact with the spirit of nature out there. So it's really there's just you and the spirit of nature. There's
mm,
nothing else actually. Yeah, and I feel very at home with that. So it's and I think Ian will agree with me. Uh, it's a shamanic type of experience. Yeah,
mm.
it's more than a human being experiencing some things. You experience some interweaving of yourself with nature and all of its vassals.
It's interesting because you have to be on your own for that. Because just like we meditate, or just like we try to find out who we are and who am I, all these questions, and you have to be on your own. You can't do it in a group. It's not possible because there's too many different energies and vibrations. And also the fact that subconsciously you still know, whether you close your eyes or whatever you do, that there are other people there or there are other sounds. You can't. And it has to be at such a distance to be in the outlet back on your own, driving for 3 days or walking for 3 hours rather. That's the experience, isn't it? And that's where you become receptive because there's no other distractions there, wherever that may be.
It's very, very true. You begin to form a relationship with that. Yeah.
Mm. It's wonderful.
It is an exceptional experience. And I have this whenever I'm interacting with stones, whether it be at that beach that I mentioned,
Mm.
which is just an hour and a half from Sydney, or right out in the outback. And there are other places these days that I go. I haven't been out to that place again, although I'd love to go. There's another place I go. It takes me 3 days to drive there, and then I have to walk in for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours in, 2.5 hours out. Yeah, and you've got to get it all just right. Otherwise, you're walking back in the dark, and hey, that's dangerous, especially if you're on your own.
This story, and previous as well. I've heard this. This is what is a real blessing because it's true healing, where somebody like yourself, who is so gifted, can spend so much time. And this is, I don't want to embarrass you, but from where I'm sitting, and for those listening to this show, I mean, it's not common. It's far and few between. So, I mean, wow, the greatest respect to you, and actually gratitude because of the work that you do. And it does make an immense difference. The fact that you can do what you do and you're so committed to it. I mean, that's within the umbrella of service to humanity. That is brilliant because your objective is to find something, find a gemstone, and we're going to talk about this, of course, prove it and see what that signature is and how it can help humanity. I mean, that's just wow, you know.
When Yeah, thank you. When you put it together like that, it sounds amazing, and it is amazing. And I must say, it's part of the fabric of homeopathy.
Mm,
And I mean, you only have to read about what Herring did and how he got lacuses. Yeah. And how he was paralyzed for the rest of his life because of it.
Mm.
And I just can't imagine him going with his wife into the Amazon, in the 1800s. Like,
I mean,
wow,
wow.
I've got nothing on him. It's sort of like
It's
I've got
incredible,
Jesus.
isn't it? But this is the modern version, isn't it? This is
Yeah.
obviously everything has moved on, and but still, I mean, you say that, but then technically, I mean, you're doing the same thing. You're going alone, like you said. You got roasted when you came back, and the two gentlemen were there.
Hmm.
You spend 3 days driving and three hours walking, and then all you see is a sparrow out of what, 3 hours, 6 hours, maybe. I mean,
Hmm.
it's the modern equivalent of what Herring did.
It is, I guess, the modern equivalent, and but I just want to make this point that it's part of the fabric of homeopathy that we have this interface with nature.
Mm.
And I have a really lovely story that I really need to share with you. And I forget what situation I got it in. It was one of my early visits to Europe. And there is a tradition that goes right through homeopathy, and it interfaces with herbalism
Mm.
and with connection with the natural world. So I was talking to a homeopath there, and they were telling me that the story of a homeopath needing to make a new wasp remedy.
Mm.
I think it was Jürgen Becker telling me about this. Familiar with him?
Sorry, say that again.
Jürgen Becker, have you heard of him? He's
Yes,
passed
no, no,
away.
I've never. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, passed away now, but really uh, wonderful, wonderful German homeopath. So the story goes like this. He wanted a new wasp. So that remedy, European wasp. So
Mm.
he asked his pharmacist to find a new wasp to make up in the pharmacy. And he knew that the pharmacist went out to the country each year. And that pharmacist went out and he was looking for a wasp nest and he wasn't having any luck.
Mm.
And on the last day, he was sitting in the room of his small cottage there, and he was writing a letter in handwriting in those days on his desk.
Mm. Mm.
This must have been in the 70s or 80s. And as he wrote, he had a glass beside him, was a glass of water, and he'd just finished the glass of water. As he finished the glass of water and continued to write, two wasps, two European wasps, flew through the window and landed beside him. And he got the glass and put it over the wasps and made the new remedy. And this story speaks so beautifully about the interface that we have with Mother Nature. She's in on this as much as we are. This is really, the hand of the spirit sort of reaching out to humans to say, hey, I've got something really special for you in healing.
This story is so inspiring, and it's just making me think as you were saying that. But the intention has to be clean. That's why it's far and few between. The intention has to be there, and that's where you're helped then as a result, and things open up to you. I mean, this is incredible. The story that you've told me, but it's the work that you do. It's incredible. Tell half 50 people and they think, no, I don't think. How can you do that? How can you drive for 3 hours and or go on a beach and spend hours and hours looking? But if the intention is there with the objective of helping humanity, it's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a two-way thing. It's the love of the nature and the helping of humanity
Yeah,
both.
yeah,
Yeah. But
amazing.
you're right. And we capture that beautifully in homeopathy because we don't have um, uh, remedies that are owned by companies, basically.
I always
So
say homeopathy doesn't have an ego. Remedies, they don't have an ego. They are there given as a gift to humanity from nature that, hey, here we are. This is what we can help you with as far as your sickness is concerned, you know? And you can't patent it as well. Rachel Roberts was on the show a few early in the summer from HRIs, and
yes,
she said the problem is that the clinical trials are so far and few between is because you can't patent homeopathy. If arnica's growing on the mountaintop or pulsatilla or whatever, how can you patent that? It could be in my garden with chamomile or calendula or whatnot,
yes, and we don't want to patent it.
No.
And and it really is something really special that we have. It's extraordinary, actually, in this world.
Mm. And it's free.
Okay.
It's there. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, just as I'm saying, Jan Scholten's talking about looking at ferns, and he's had some really good results with autism as a result of ferns. Um, so there's a cure for all every disease. It's just a matter of finding it and how we are progressing and where our vested interest is. Be at one with, I know you know this, but I'm just for the listeners' sake,
Please, yes.
be at one with nature, be grateful, be humble, and gifts are given to you, which will probably change the life of thousands, if not millions of people.
I think that's spot on, and you've really expressed it beautifully there, Atik. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, we've spoken about obviously the gems, and now comes the proving side of it. So how do you go about that? I mean, is it a lengthy process? I mean, do share, because it'll be very interesting for the listeners to know that process, so we know how you perhaps acquire the source material, let's call it, the semi-precious and precious stones. But what happens next when you bring them back?
Well, first off, depending on how strong the stone is, for me, things might start happening immediately. So, uh, um, if I like something, it ends up going in my pocket or in my backpack. Yeah.
Hmm.
If I really like it, it might go in my pocket. And it's in my energy field, and things are starting to happen already. Yeah. So I might be getting approving on myself, in the next 24 hours. Yeah, that
Hmm.
can happen. And so an example of that is that I picked up some heliotrope, which is known as bloodstone. And it's quite well known in the gem world, has been known for 1,000 years, maybe longer. And it's a beautiful green piece of silicous material with red spots in it. And they
Hmm.
say those red spots are the drops of blood of Christ, on the cross. Yeah? And that it's very good for healing wounds. And that's the traditional connection to it.
Hmm.
Anyway, I have this piece of heliotrope, and I'm there with my partner who's completely in tune with this. And that night, we go to a restaurant and to have dinner, and we're waiting for the dinner to be served. And I'm sitting there, and suddenly a splash of blood appears on my serviette. I said,
Okay.
"What's this?" I look
Yeah.
at my partner. "What's this?" And then another splash happens, and there had been a spontaneous bleed on my lip. Yeah. I was completely thrown. It was
Yeah.
like, and it just came out. I've never had a bleed on my lip before or anything like it. It just sort of flushed forth. Yeah. And and so that was the beginning of a heliotrope proving, and it's a rich proving inside of me. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, that happened about 10 years ago. And that often happens when I'm really close to a remedy. That happens. Yeah. But what happened in the first instance is that I was running a proving group. Yeah. I was then running a college here in Sydney,
Hmm.
and we had a proving group. And we were doing various Aussie things, you know.
Hmm.
And I went out for my first retreat in the bush. It was in 1994. It's just coming up to 30 years. And um, on that retreat, I was meditating and I had a vision. And that started the whole thing off, putting the gems and homeopathy together. That vision was about this stone rhodonite. And so I was very inspired. I found some, I bought it back, and I said to the group, we've got to prove this.
Hmm.
So I had a group of 8 or 9 people who did regular provings, and many of them were sensitive, and then hence the whole thing unfolded from there. Yeah, that was the first instance of really getting into it. There'd been one clinical experience before that. So that's normally what happens, the two extremes here. I just have it move through me. Or the other possibility is that I organize a group. It's much easier for me to have it move through me, even though it can make my life quite torrid. Yeah.
Hmm.
They're not gentle like plants. Then organizing a group is a big deal, you know, because of the group dynamics and because of all the ins and outs of having people in one place at one time and staying connected and picking up the pieces when people fall apart. So they're the two things. You know, I've just done a tiger eye proving in Egypt, in the
Wow.
desert there, with a group of people. Wow, it was really, people were falling over left, right, and center.
Really?
Yeah, acute pain, you know. I had to manage 4 cases on the first day.
Wow.
That was one of the most extreme provings I've ever done. And
How
I have
how
seen
how how
extreme
I
things happen in provings.
really?
Mm.
How do you deal with that though? When you're in that moment, do you have to let it pass? You can't stop it, can you? You have to let it pass.
Well, no, you have to antidote.
Ah,
You have no
okay.
option. When someone has extreme symptoms, if someone's in extreme pain, you have to antidote. But what you do is you antidote with a higher potency of the proving remedy.
But if you're proving it, how do you get to that remedy, the higher potency?
You already have it prepared.
Okay, okay, got it, got it. So
You
I
have
have
it
a
prepared, or you prepare it with a synthesizer, some sort of remedy synthesizer.
yeah. I have a question for you on this because you've mentioned with yourself, and the bloodstone and the bleeding of the lip, and this other thing that happened in Egypt. Are the gems, when you prove them, are they heavy as far as the proving is concerned compared to plants? Because you said about being gentle, plants are gentle, but are they heavy in the symptomology, the picture?
Without doubt, they're heavy. I often say, the real movers in homeopathy are the snakes, the gems, and the heavy metals.
Mm.
Yeah, they're the ones that are really crunchy. Look, the others are all important and have an important place, and you wouldn't be without them. And I use them every day. I use plants every day. But they're the ones that are really, I find, in my experience, they're really, really crunchy. You really know you're taking a remedy when you have if they have any
I
responsibility.
was going to go on to that, and I don't know if how what do you think about this? But as far as gemstones are concerned, is it still mentals and physicals, or is it as particular? Does it sway a particular way as far as what that proving is? Can you put them in? Can you compartmentalize it, or is it just it depends on the stone really, just like a remedy?
Yeah. No, I don't think it sways either way. What's happened, I think there's going to be a lot more work in the future with these remedies.
Mm.
And that's why I've been very, very careful to identify them well. And I've done some provings, and there'll probably be other provings in the future that will even elucidate them more than the provings that I've done. But the way they've come to me, um, the mentals have been strong, according to the people that I've done it with. Um, the physical symptoms have been there. Um, Food desires have been clear and strong. I love them, and I find them good in clinical practice. And of course, with the gemstones, particularly the spiritual aspect comes through really quite strongly. So the connection of the human connection in an interface with the soul, comes through very potently.
You know, I'm. It's just so nice listening to this because I mean, it's brilliant. You know, you are in a different dimension. You know, I think from many other people, and I think you need to be because of the work that you're doing. You know, it's taken you there, and without that, I think it's very, very difficult. You know, we spoke about meditation, and we've spoken about you've spoken how about intuition, and it really is something unique. And of course, if it wasn't, then I'd be out there, you know, looking. There is a certain attraction, isn't it? And it's such a nice position to be in as well. The fact that you know, and you can't sometimes explain that to somebody else. You know, sometimes we try and explain something, but you can't because it's just like, how do I put into words, limited vocabulary, the feeling and the sensation and the vibration and the energy and everything else that surrounds me at that time? It's tough, isn't it?
It is an amazing thing. This is the problem, the um, living problem that we have with homeopathy. How do you explain something that you can't touch, see, hear, or feel
Mm,
to someone in the material world? Yeah, because that's what homeopathy is.
mm,
Those remedies don't have anything in them in terms of atoms. Yeah.
yeah.
And how can you explain that? How do we actually cross that barrier with humanity? Yeah. And we have to do it all the time when we do a proving because we're taking something that doesn't have anything in it and we're getting symptoms.
I mean, yeah. How does that happen, right?
Yeah, how does that happen?
Yeah,
And who's going to believe you, right?
yeah, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
And the whole thing is amazing. And I want to just say one other thing here. And I think the experiences of people like Ian White, many homeopaths, and I study a lot of Chinese medicine these days, and I know the roots of Chinese medicine. It all came from shamanic experience. Yeah. So
Mm,
this interface that humans have with the other, the so-called non-existent. Yeah.
mm.
And that is important to us, and we do have to nurture it and honor it as homeopaths.
So we're going slightly off on tangent with what I'm going to ask you, but it's a fascinating conversation, you know. But so if your intention is correct, or it's pure, or it's with the pure objective, then there are possibilities of tapping into other dimensions, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. How wondrous.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to feel the intention comes with a feeling,
Hmm.
and the feeling is it's really about love, actually, because I loved the Stones and I loved homeopathy. Yeah, that's all it is. When you boil it down, the intention is really, really important. It's part of the loving. When you
Yeah.
love somebody or something, you just pour your heart into it. It's, yeah,
It's a beautiful, you've said it so beautifully and eloquently because love softens the heart, doesn't it?
it
And if
does.
the heart is soft, it opens, doesn't it? And if it's open, then of course you're going to be drawn and attracted to so many different things which normal people would not, they wouldn't, they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't be able to put it into into context. What are you talking about? What does that mean? How did you do this? It's fascinating, but because if you're sitting in a restaurant and your lip is bleeding and you've got bloodstone in your pocket, and it's like you can tell somebody, but say, "Nah, I think maybe you must have just bitten your lip or something." That's a common thing, right? It's so brilliant to know, and I can feel it that and I know, and homeopaths the world over know, but it's also quite a conundrum, isn't it? Because how do you actually share that with somebody? That why are we special? No, it's to do with love. You so beautifully said it, and a soft heart and wanting something better for others, not for yourself. Because homeopathy and gemstone therapy and all the other non-conventional treatments or therapies or medicine, I suppose you could call it, is all about that, isn't it? It's about helping others.
It is. It is. It's primary and it has its own beauty and its own power. Yeah.
Peter, you'll be surprised to know that we've come to the end of part 1. That was a very quick conversation, actually. I must say. I mean, in the sense of the time has just flown by. But for the listeners, this is going to be a 3-part special, and this is part 1 of my conversation with the magnetic and very inspiring Peter Tumminello from Australia. And we must carry this on, and we're going to talk a lot about the gems themselves, the structure. I really do want to talk to you about your book, The Psyche and Structure, and also 12 Jewels, how that came about, how homeopathy and gemstones can work together, and your experiences of helping people and seeing people helped through gemstones.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you, Atik.
It's been an absolute honor for part 1. Honestly, I think this is, when we started, I didn't think the conversation would go this deep, but I'm so grateful that it has, because it's left a really nice feeling in my heart.
Oh, you've made my day.
Thank you so very much. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far, and of course you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.